So I've got real problems with this big government, jobs created in Washington mentality, and it has to go. Cap and trade. That's the next offensive piece of legislation, if you don't count the budget that came down the pike. You know, if this thing passes the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, I like to say we might as well put closed for business signs on the border of southern Indiana. Because 98% of our electric power, my latest reading, comes from coal. That's right, sir. And this is nothing more than a carbon dioxide, a coal tax, essentially. It's going to push jobs overseas during a very down economy anyway. We'll have to build more power plants to sustain the factories overseas. And oh, by the way, those power plants are dirtier than our power plants. So you not only kill American jobs, you make the environment dirtier. I think it's a horrible piece of legislation. And we can talk more about that later, as with all these things. And then we have health care reform. The trifecta: stimulus, cap and trade, and then health care. You know, my opponent voted for a public option health care plan. Now, the thing we've got is offensive enough, and we'll talk some about that tonight. But the public option plan, as many of you know, essentially is a big government plan. It was designed to swallow up the entire health insurance market. And the justification behind this was that we have to keep insurance companies honest so that the price of insurance will come down. Number one, in the end, the price of health insurance actually went up under the government's plan. An absolute nightmare, because it does need to come down, and there are a lot of commonsensical things we can do to make that happen. Number two, if you're not controlling health costs through prices, which is what we do in a free market, that's how people determine what treatments they're going to purchase. That's how people determine which doctor they're going to go to. If you're not going to do it that way, you have to ration. It's one of the two. There's no other way to control costs. The American way is to let the market take care of it. The European way is to ration. I visited Europe a number of times. I love Europe. I don't want the United States of America to become Europe. This has always been, it shall forever remain, if I have anything to say about it, I suspect if you have anything to say about it, a land of freedom and opportunity. We can start with nothing, you can work your way up, and gosh darn it, you may fall back down again. But that's freedom. I've got 4 kids, I mentioned them earlier. I'm running for office so that my children and so my grandchildren can have a better future. Right now I talk to people, they don't believe that our future is going to be better than today. That's not an American sentiment. We've always believed that the future is going to be better than today. That's essentially what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that's why you're here, because you share my belief in the importance of getting involved now. We've all got a fire in the belly. We understand the importance. We understand we're running out of time to deal with these issues. 2010 is our year, and Barren Hill is our path to making things a little bit better. So with that, I'll take some questions here. Whatever's on your mind.
So basically what you're saying, you're looking forward to reaffirming your oath to defend and protect the Constitution.
Yeah, the question was about the oath. All members of Congress take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. People have asked me about that before, and that's absolutely an oath that I'll take very seriously. But I also took an earlier oath. When I entered the military, I took an oath to uphold. That's right. That's exactly right, sir. It never expires. I see some veterans out here, and you took an oath too. That oath has never expired. And I sure as heck have never disavowed it. I suspect you haven't either. So I'm going to stay engaged to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. What does that mean? You know, let's put a little meat on the carcass, if you will, here. Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution defines exactly those responsibilities that our government should be involved in, the enumerated powers of the Constitution. We have stopped reading that document. It's one that legislators, when they hit the floor of the House of Representatives, they ought to bring a copy with them and consult. And whenever any piece of legislation comes up, they ought to be able to cite specific provisions that justify passing that piece of legislation. Otherwise, they ought not to pass it. We also have a 10th Amendment to the Constitution. And I visit Tea Party groups a fair amount, and there are a number of encouraging things about the Tea Party movement to me. Well, one of them is you've been hearing about the 10th Amendment a lot more from Tea Partiers. And what that amendment says, as you pull out your Constitution, I'm going to say, I'll paraphrase in case I get a word wrong or something, but it essentially says that those powers not delegated to the federal government by the states or by the people are reserved to the states or to the people. And so in other words, a government of limited powers, and if it's not in the Constitution, the power is yours. And if our federal government, our Congress, pass any laws that aren't consistent with the Constitution, they're breaking the law. We got to hold them accountable by sending them home. And they've done that time and again, and we can talk about some of those overreaches here tonight. Do you have a follow-up, sir?
Now, our health care bill, I found 19 violations of the Constitution.
Wow.
And the president signed it. So he is in violation of the Constitution.
The question was about the health care legislation and its violation of the Constitution. I have heard some different reasons as to why this legislation is constitutional. I do believe there's a very good chance it's constitutional, and here's the strongest argument. It seems to be justified under the Interstate Commerce Clause of our Constitution. And yeah, I see some snickers. I mean, everything seems to be justified these days under the Interstate Commerce Clause, the Constitution, or the General Welfare Clause, which is, we can talk about that thing later as well. But the Interstate Commerce Clause was, go figure, designed to give the federal government some jurisdiction over actual commerce between the states. If you choose not to buy health insurance, are you engaging in any kind of commerce? No, by definition, you're not. You're staying out of the stream of commerce. You're not buying anything. But somehow they said the Interstate Commerce Clause allows them to force people that aren't buying health insurance to buy health insurance. And so that's the primary challenge, sir, and it's one that our state attorney general, as you may know, has signed on to that challenge. So I find this use of the Interstate Commerce Clause really troubling. It goes back to the New Deal era.
Right.
Yeah. This man knows his Constitution. Roosevelt, Wilson, the Progressive era. There was one particular legal case that comes to mind. It's called Wickard versus Filburn.
Right.
And one gentleman wanted to grow, I think it was some wheat in his backyard during the New Deal. And nothing like that had ever been regulated by the federal government before. But old Mr. Wickard went back there and he said, you know what, I'm going to grow this wheat for my personal consumption. I'm a rock-ribbed American. You can't tell me what I can or can't grow in my backyard. The Supreme Court says, oh yes you can. Because that backyard full of wheat in some way impacts the price of wheat nationally. You're not going to go to somewhere else to buy your wheat because you've got your own wheat in your backyard. Therefore, the federal government can regulate it as interstate commerce. Well, if you go down that line of reasoning, everything becomes interstate commerce. And that's really one of the things we've seen in the 20th century. The federal government has grown because Congress can pass legislation and just say, well, it's justified under the Interstate Commerce Clause.
Anytime the